These are the top 3 underrated plugins for Final Cut Pro that are still flying under the radar. They have helped me create over 70 videos in under 6 weeks. If you aren't using them yet, it's time you start. Last month, I finished my Final Cut Pro Masterclass, and I used these plugins so extensively that I needed to chat about how useful they are and how good they are. And these plugins come from my buddy Dylan Bates, the Final Cut Bro. And you can tell that they were created by someone that has to do these kind of things over and over again. So they're well thought out and they work really well. And the first set of plugins are the Pro Zooms and Pans. And I use this over and over again because my course is very much like a giant tutorial. Because there were a lot of times where I needed to zoom in and to pan the different portions of the screen to really communicate what I was talking about. So Pro Zooms is a collection of zooms and pans. So we're going to start with Pro Zooms. You can use it as an adjustment layer or as an effect, but I work with it as an adjustment layer because I like it above all my footage. It's very intuitive to use. You have this bounding box of where it's going to zoom into, and you can adjust the animation speed. So if you want it to be a little bit faster, you can make that speed go faster. And also has an onion skinning effect, so you can actually see. So if you need to line stuff up so it animates from one place to another, that's a really good little function. Just make sure you turn it off before you render out. And you have all the things that you'd want to have in a tool like this. You have your ease in, ease out, ease both, all the parameters. You can even rotate it if you want. It has the functions that you expect it to have. But the great thing about it is because Final Cut doesn't really have a good keyframing system. If you wanted to go to another portion of this screen, you need to have this zoom back out and then zoom into another thing. But with Pro Zooms and Pro Pan, you can take that adjustment layer, put it underneath, and this is key, you have to have it underneath. You can actually go to another portion of the clip. So zoom in, play, and then pan to another portion of the screen. And that was so vital for everything that I was creating because a lot of times I was jumping from one place to another within the tutorial. And with the Pro Pan, you can actually zoom in or out as well. So you can pan and zoom at the exact same time. So it zooms in, and then it can pan and zoom to another portion. And because it has a pan and zoom, it can zoom back to where you were before. So if you need to go back between multiple places, this functionality alone is something that if you create tutorials or you need to be able to zoom into something and then pan to something else, this fixes one of the biggest things that frustrates me most about Final Cut Pro. So I'm super happy that Dylan was able to make this plugin. And on top of that, it also comes with Pro Burns and Pro Burns Pan, which work very similarly to the Ken Burns effect in Final Cut Pro, but it's not limited to the beginning of the clip and ending of the clip. Because it's an adjustment layer, you can set it to start from wherever you want. And it's also intuitive, where you just choose where you want it to go to, and it'll do a Ken Burns effect, or in this case, a Pro Burns effect. And it'll just do this constant zoom into one location. And the biggest difference between the title effects or the adjustment layers and the effects is this is great if you want to put it over top of footage, but if you had, say, an edit and you wanted this transition to stay zoomed in and it transitions to another clip with the fade, this is where you would use the Pro Zooms effect, and the effect remains and it doesn't create this jarring jump. And that's the main difference when you would use the adjustment layer or the effect. So the Pro Zooms, should have called it Bro Zooms. The Pro Zooms is great, but I film a lot of my tutorials like this, where I have my talking head portion. So I actually do film myself going through the tutorial and I want to be on camera. So before, what I would do is I would create a mask, I would round it out, I would make sure there's no feather, make sure it's pretty big. Then I would take that whole layer, I would scale it down, and then I would move it over, and that would be okay. And it would look good. And then I would add a border, but the border wouldn't go around the shape mask, so then I'd have to pre-compose it into a compound clip to get the outline around. And it's a frustrating process. So the other plugin is the picture-in-picture effect. And once you have your clip selected, you just drag it in, you make it smaller, and you move it into place. and you are done. And you can actually turn on the animate in, and it'll go from wide and drop it down into the final position. And as you saw during the animation, it doesn't extend the border. You can actually see the background. It has extend video edges where you just click on that. It doesn't become as jarring during the transition. And it allows you to adjust the center point, the width of the border. You can offset the edge of that border or bring it in. You can make it centered. You can make it on the outside. And it gives you a lot of options to create a border look that is unique to your brand, your style. You can actually do a double border, and just gives you lots of options to create the kind of look that you're going for. Even has a drop shadow, and the latest update comes with long shadow, so you can just drop that on and it gives you a nice long shadow. So if you want to do some crazy funky stuff, you can, or you can add a glow, and it gives you the option to choose your colors and have the gradient. And this is all part of that same plugin package. And there's also animations that you can add to it, but you just have to make sure that you turn off the animations for the picture in picture. So you have the pop in and out. And because it's a separate effect, you can control it. You can do pixel in, rotate in, prism in. Or the one thing that I typically tend to do is I just add the pop in effect from add motion. I just set the 0 point to free, and that way it gives me the pop-up effect right where the circle is. And this is an update I asked for from Dylan to see if he can implement something similar right in the effect. But add motion is also a great plugin, but it's not flying under the radar, so it's not part of the top 3. I typically use thud just to get that animation in there as quickly as possible. And I just set the duration to be nice and low, so it looks like a thud coming in right away. Bam. And once I have it set, because I use it so often, these two effects together, I just save a preset. I select everything that I want and I name it what I want. So P in P Raphael, and I just save it into my presets folder. So at any point, if I'm starting from scratch, I don't have to start from scratch. So I'm back to the beginning. I go to my folder, I select the clip that I want, and I double click my preset. And it's already done. That alone, instead of having to copy and paste a whole bunch of different effects and trying to pre-compose and make compound clips of everything, I was able to just set this up, and whenever I wanted to bring in myself to the tutorial portion, I just dropped this preset on and it just saved the day. Another great plugin. So that in combination with the zoom effect, it just became a great workflow where I was able to do this kind of stuff super fast. And that's how I was able to get through 70 videos in under 6 weeks on my off time, because I was working full time. So it's even crazier when you think about it, that I was just doing that in my spare time. And just an effect that I'm loving overall is the Final Cut Pro's truly handheld. This is just a set of effects that mimic handheld for different types of focal lengths. And this one's a free plugin, and just dropping it in, it gives you an option to repeat the edges. So if it moves it beyond, it's just repeating the edges. You can fit to zoom. So zoom in a little bit so that way it can move. And you can set the smoothing a little bit higher. And it just takes a static tripod shot and gives you the feeling of handheld, which is fantastic because sometimes you want to add a little bit of dynamic motion into a tripod or static shot. So it's an easy way to add that kind of little bit of movement. You can choose the focal length that works best for your footage, but you can also just go to custom and you can tell it how much you want. So we're just gonna go crazy. Yeah, so if you want to have a crazy handheld, just some kind of wacky cameraman is helping you. Obviously, don't do that. Just set it to something that's a little bit comfortable and find what works for you. So it's a great free plugin. Can't ask for a better price than that. And I find myself using it a lot on footage that I just want to add a little bit of dynamic motion to it. These are my top 3 plugins that I find are really underrated and still flying under the radar. So you got the Bro Zooms, you have the picture-in-picture effect, and Dylan also has a whole bunch of other plugins and effects that are fantastic for Final Cut Pro. There's a link in the description. Make sure you go check them out and see how they can help you. If you want to get the most out of Final Cut Pro, check out my masterclass, Enhanced Editing, with over 10 hours of lessons just like this one to help you master your craft and elevate your story. The link is in the description. Also, here's a playlist with more Final Cut Pro tips and tricks. As always, thanks for watching.